turn our focus now to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and let's fill you in on developments in the last couple of hours. A new report says Russia's military could be unable to operate the high-tech weapons and communication systems it's been using in Ukraine if the West were to tighten export controls. It says almost all Moscow's modern military systems depend on Western-made microelectronics. Moscow has found ways to bypass sanctions and export controls, and if the loopholes could be closed, Russia's military might be permanently degraded, according to that report. In the meantime, all attention is also turning to Europe's largest nuclear power plant in the Ukrainian city of Zaporizhzhia, where the UN nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, has called for immediate action to end any military action nearby. IAEA Chief Mariano Grossi says he's extremely concerned by reports of shelling near the plant seized by Russia in March. Russia has kept its Ukrainian employees, but Kyiv accuses Russian forces of firing rockets at civilian areas from the site, employing terror tactics. Grossi says strikes on Friday underline the very real risk of a nuclear disaster that could threaten public health and the environment in Ukraine and beyond. He says Ukrainian staff must be able to carry out their important duties without threats or pressure, and that the IAEA should be allowed to provide technical support. Well, Russia does say that the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is operating as normal. Ukraine accuses Russia of responsibility for renewed shelling on Saturday that damaged 3 radiation sensors. It also injured a worker at the plant in what was the second hit in consecutive days on the site. The region's Russian-installed authorities says Ukrainian forces hit the site with a multiple rocket launcher, damaging administrative buildings and an area near a storage facility. The Russian embassy in Washington also itemized the damage, saying artillery fire from Ukrainian nationalists damaged 2 high-voltage power lines and a water pipeline, but critical infrastructure was not affected. The Kremlin says Western countries with influence over Ukraine should push Kyiv to stop shelling Zaporizhzhia and the nuclear power plant. Russia's defense ministry continues with the rhetoric about Ukrainian forces shelling Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station and damaging the high-voltage power lines and forcing the plant to reduce its output. During its daily military briefing today, the defense ministry said Ukraine had shelled the power station around 12:40 p.m. local time from positions near the town of Marnets. Kyiv has, of course, denied attacking the plant, and the country's nuclear power company, Energoatom, says a worker was wounded when Russian forces shelled the power station on Saturday evening. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has added his voice to the discussion over the concern for Zaporizhzhia, saying the risk of nuclear confrontation has returned after decades, and called on nuclear states to commit to no first use of the weapons. He was making the appeal in Japan, where he said any attack on a nuclear plant is a suicidal thing. He also highlighted the full and irreversible denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula as a key objective in reducing the proliferation of nuclear arms, and the global armament is moving backwards.
This is the moment when the risk of a nuclear confrontation is back, something that we have forgotten for decades. This is the moment, as I said, to ask the nuclear-armed countries to commit to the principle of non-first use and to commit to not use and not threaten, as I mentioned, non-nuclear armed countries with full transparency in relation to their arsenals. Any attack to a nuclear plant is a suicidal thing, and I hope that those attacks will end. And at the same time, I hope that the IAEA will be able to have access to the plant and to exercise its mandate competencies. The denuclearization, full denuclearization, verifiable and irreversible of the Korean Peninsula remains a major objective, together with the success of the JCPOA, to avoid the proliferation of nuclear weapons. We are moving backwards in relation to disarmament. We have now 13,000 nuclear bombs in the world. And we are seeing huge investments in modernizing nuclear arsenals. So this is the moment to say, stop it. That the billions that are being used in this arms race need to be used fighting climate change, fighting poverty, addressing the needs of the international community.
We'll have more on the Russian invasion of Ukraine after the break. Plus, China's military exercises continuing today. Taiwan's representative in Nigeria says the island nation is ready for any eventualities. Stay with us. Welcome back. Russia's defense ministry says its forces have shot down 19 US-made HIMARS missiles across eastern and southern Ukraine and destroyed HIMARS vehicles near the town of Kramatorsk. Russian Defense Ministry spokesperson Igor Konashnikov said this at a press briefing this morning that armed forces of the Russian Federation continue a special military operation in Ukraine. During the counter-battery fight, a battery of multiple rocket launchers, Hurricane in the Okeretyn area, a battery of self-propelled artillery mounts Accusations in the area of Krasny, as well as combat vehicles of American rocket launchers HIMARS in the area of Kramatorsk were hit. In addition, 19 rockets from the American HIMARS multiple launch rocket system were shot down in the air in the areas of Suka-Kamyanka, Kharkiv region, Melitopol, Zaporizhzhia region, Antonivka, and Kherson region. Shipments of grains are still coming out of Ukraine. The Turkish-flagged bulk carrier Polonet has arrived at the northern port in Turkey 3 days after leaving Ukraine. The ship was carrying 12,000 tons of corn from Ukraine's Chernomorsk docked to Derin's port located at the Black Sea. A ship is expected to unload its cargo at the port later today. The shipment is, of course, coming a couple of weeks after Russia and Ukraine signed a deal brokered by the United Nations and Turkey after warning that the halt in grain shipments caused by the conflict could lead to severe food shortages and even outbreaks of famine in parts of the world. The resumption of grain exports is being overseen by the JCC in Istanbul, where Russian, Ukrainian, Turkish, and UN personnel are working. Authorities in Finland say the country has registered a record number of asylum seekers following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, outstripping a previous high figure recorded during the 2015 refugee crisis. The Finnish Immigration Service said in a statement that by August 4, those fleeing Ukraine due to the Russian military attack had submitted over 35,000 applications for temporary protection, and in that 1/3 of those fleeing Ukraine were children. Overall, more than 37,000 people are currently registered in the country's reception system, which is more than ever before. The Immigration Service says the previous record in the Nordic country, which borders Russia, was about 32,000. A service said it processed 33,480 applications for protection so far, meaning that about 95% of applicants have already received a decision on their case, with less than 1% not granted asylum. China's military drills around the Taiwan island are aimed at delivering a warning as well as a punishment to those who are seeking succession, according to Chinese Foreign Ministry. The drills were launched in response to the U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, which China says has severely infringed upon the country's sovereignty. According to Wang Wenbin, regardless of China's strong opposition and repeated representations, U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited China's Taiwan region under the indulgence and arrangements of the U.S. government. He said Taiwan is part of China. China's normal military drills and the surrounding seas of its own territory have been open, transparent, and professional. Relevant Chinese departments have also issued timely announcements. This is in line with domestic and international law, as well as international practices. This is a warning to those provoking us and a rightful action of the country in safeguarding its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Wang Wenbing notes that China's position is justified, reasonable, and legal. He says China's measures are firm, strong, and measured, and its military exercises are open, transparent, and consistent with domestic and international laws as well as international practices. But Taiwan's defense ministry says Chinese aircraft and ships did not enter Taiwan territorial waters and airspace in the recent drills. But according to the defense ministry's official, Yan Yuxian, China's recent military drills and no navigation zones had crossed the median line of the Taiwan Strait. He says the action has squeezed Taiwan's military drill space and affected the normal commercial operation of international flying routes. One Chinese analyst says about 10 Chinese naval ships and 20 military aircrafts briefly crossed the Taiwan Strait median line on Friday. According to a Taiwan source, the median line is an unofficial line of control that military aircraft and battleships from either side normally do not cross. The median line has never been legally recognized and is an imaginary line drawn up by the U.S. military for their combat requirements in the previous century. The duration and precise location of the latest drills is not yet known, but Taiwan has already eased flight restrictions near the 6 earlier China exercise areas surrounding the islands. China, however, insists Taiwan is part of China and that China is conducting normal military exercises in its own waters in an open, transparent, and professional way. Relevant departments have been issued announcements in timely manner in line with both domestic and international law, according to the Foreign Ministry spokesperson. When asked whether or not China's continuation of its military drills abided by international law and if a new warning for civilian ships and aircraft will be issued, he said all parties have been informed. The people of Taipei are feeling confident about the island's defense despite China's fresh military drill started today. One student said he did not think China would attack Taiwan, and he believes Taiwan's national defense is not too bad. He says the negative side of an attack is that it would be more complicated to export goods to China, while in positive light, Taiwan would gain more recognition from countries worldwide. Another resident of Shanghai, who is originally from Taiwan, says the country is expanding step by step, and this is not a bad thing. Taiwan will welcome officials from other countries despite the threats of attacks by China because the island nation is prepared for any eventuality with its Asian neighbor. Representative of the Taipei Trade Office in Nigeria, Andy Yiping Liu, says while it maintains calm composure, Taiwan is not a sitting duck for China and is prepared to respond if and when China attacks.
Our military buildup for the last 50 years has been continuously going on, and we've been buying more than 200 of the U.S. F-16 jet fighter. That's one of the largest F-16 jet fighter fleet in the world. And we are building our own submarine, our Navy submarine, and we build our own destroyer, our own kind of a missile attack boat, and we have one of the strongest missile defense systems in the world. So even if the Chinese are launching numerous kind of missile attack, our radar system has already locked them up. If they dare to fly into our territory, we'll shoot them down immediately, because that would be a violate of our own territorial sky and our water and everything. But for a moment, our president and our military leader has said that we have a self-constraint of not to help the Chinese to escalate the tension. We do not play around with the game. They play their own game. We just sit and stand still to watch them carefully. But if they dare to make any kind of move, we will fight them off.